The council chamber stretched for miles beneath the surface of Zenthar Prime. 847 species had sent their representatives to this place. Some walked on legs. Others floated in containment fields. A few existed only as clouds of gas inside crystalline spheres. But today, they all had one thing in common. They were here to decide the fate of Earth. Ambassador Kelthros stood at the central podium. His blue scales reflected the light from 1,000 viewing screens. He was Zorvathian, a species that had ruled 300 star systems for over 2,000 years. His voice carried across the chamber with absolute confidence. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began. "We have monitored the human species for 15 years. Our observations are complete. The evidence is clear." He gestured to the massive screens around the chamber. Images of Earth appeared. Cities, wars, pollution. Divided nations, arguing over invisible lines on maps. "Observe," Kelthros continued. "A species that cannot even unite its own planet. They fight over resources they have in abundance. They damage their world while possessing the knowledge to save it. They create weapons capable of destroying themselves, then build more weapons to protect against those weapons." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many heads nodded. Others made sounds of agreement in languages that had no human equivalent. High Chancellor Vryn watched from her elevated throne. She was ancient even by galactic standards. Her species, the Korthax, had been among the first to achieve faster-than-light travel. She had presided over the council for 300 years. Her face showed no emotion as she listened to Kelthros speak. "Furthermore," Kelthros said, pulling up more data, "humans possess remarkable physical capabilities for a pre-contact species, stronger than the Velari, more resilient than the Drin. They recover from injuries that would kill most of us, and yet they waste these gifts on primitive conflicts." He paused for effect. "The galaxy has need of workers. The Outer Rim terraforming project requires billions of laborers. The crystalline mines of Hectorus demand bodies that can withstand harsh conditions. The construction of the Arkelian Ring needs hands willing to work in hard vacuum." Another representative stood. She was Nirvani, a species that resembled walking crystals. "Are you suggesting we enslave an entire species, Ambassador Kelthros?" "I am suggesting we put a resource to proper use," Kelthros replied smoothly. "Humanity is not ready for galactic society. They lack unity, they lack vision. But they possess bodies suited for labor. We would be doing the galaxy a service. We would be doing humanity a service by giving their existence purpose." The debate lasted for hours. Some species argued for caution. A few suggested offering humanity a chance to develop naturally. But most agreed with Kelthros. The humans were primitive, violent, divided. They would destroy themselves eventually anyway. Better to use them for the benefit of civilized society. Only the Velari representative remained silent. The Velari were the oldest known species in the galaxy. They rarely spoke in council sessions. They observed, they recorded, they remembered. When the vote was called, every eye in the chamber turned to the Velari delegation. The Velari ambassador was a tall, thin being that seemed almost translucent. It looked at the screens showing Earth for a long moment. Then it pressed a button on its console. Not yes, not no. Abstain. Kelthros allowed himself a small smile. Let the vote proceed. The results appeared on every screen in the chamber. 846 votes in favor. 0 against. 1 abstention. The decision was unanimous for all practical purposes. "It is decided," High Chancellor Vryn announced. "Humanity will be incorporated into galactic society as a labor force. They will be assigned to projects across Council space. Ambassador Kelthros, you will lead the integration fleet." Kelthros bowed deeply. "It will be my honor, Chancellor." In orbit above Zenthar Prime, The fleet began to assemble. 50,000 ships from dozens of species. Battle cruisers that could crack planets. Transports designed to carry millions. Weapons platforms loaded with technology Earth had never dreamed of. The greatest armada ever assembled for a single purpose. Back on Earth, humanity remained completely unaware. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory at the International Fusion Research Center in Geneva. She was looking at readings that should have been impossible. Her team had just achieved stable fusion for 17 continuous minutes. It was a breakthrough that would change everything. "We did it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We actually did it." Her assistant, James, was already calling the director. Around the world, news organizations would soon be scrambling to cover the story. This was it. The moment humanity would solve its energy crisis. The beginning of a new age. Sarah walked to the window and looked up at the night sky. Stars twinkled peacefully above. She had always loved the stars. As a child, she had dreamed of traveling to them someday. Maybe now, with unlimited clean energy, humanity could finally reach for the cosmos. She had no way of knowing that in a few months, the stars would reach back. In a military command center buried deep beneath Colorado, General Marcus Stone reviewed intelligence reports. His career had been spent preparing for threats, terrorist organizations, rogue nations, cyber attacks. He had seen humanity at its worst and its best. The report on his desk was about unusual satellite readings. Several nations had detected strange energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Nothing conclusive, probably just cosmic radiation, natural phenomena. His analysts had found no cause for concern. Stone signed off on the report and moved to the next file. He had no reason to suspect that anything was wrong. Earth's satellites were primitive by galactic standards. They could barely detect the massive fleet that was now entering the outer solar system. On Xanthar Prime, Ambassador Kelthros stood in the command center of his flagship. Ahead of him, displayed on a holographic screen, was Earth, blue and green and beautiful, rich with resources, populated by 7 billion potential workers. "Begin final approach," he ordered. "Prepare the compliance broadcasts. Humanity's age of freedom ends tomorrow. Their age of purpose begins." The fleet moved forward through the darkness of space. 50,000 ships closing in on a world that had no idea what was coming. No defense that could stop them. No warning that could save them. The vote had been cast. The decision was final. Humanity would be enslaved. It seemed like the ending of Earth's story. But the galaxy was about to learn an important lesson. On Earth, every ending is just a new beginning. And humanity had spent its entire existence learning how to survive impossible odds. The sky over Sydney turned dark at noon. Millions of people looked up as shadows fell across the city. Ships, thousands of them, shapes that belonged in science fiction movies, not hovering above the opera house. Then the broadcast began. Every television, every radio, every phone, every computer, the same message in every language humanity had ever spoken. "People of Earth, this is the Galactic Council. Your planet has been evaluated. You have been found lacking in unity and purpose. You will now serve the greater galactic civilization. Resistance is futile. Surrender is mandatory. You have 1 hour to comply." General Stone was in the command center when the message came through. For 5 seconds there was total silence. Then every alarm in the building started screaming at once. "Get me the president," Stone barked. "Get me NATO command. Get me everyone." But it was already too late for talking. The first blast hit Moscow. Not a nuclear explosion. Something cleaner, more precise. The Kremlin simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater half a mile wide. 300,000 people died in an instant. The second blast struck Cairo. The third hit downtown Sydney. "They are showing us what happens if we resist," Stone said quietly, watching the feeds. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Earth's militaries responded. Fighter jets scrambled, missiles launched, naval fleets positioned for engagement. Humanity had spent trillions of dollars on weapons. Surely they could fight back. The missiles reached the alien ships and exploded against shields that flickered like soap bubbles, but never broke. Fighter jets fired everything they had. The ammunition bounced off or was absorbed by energy barriers. Nothing worked. Nothing even scratched the hulls of the alien vessels. Then the harvesting began. Transport ships descended over major cities. Beams of light shot down from the sky. Humans by the thousands were pulled upward, frozen in some kind of stasis field. They could not move, could not scream, could only watch as the ground fell away beneath them. Sarah Chen was running when the beam caught her. She had been trying to reach the emergency bunker beneath the fusion center. The light touched her, and suddenly she could not move. Her body lifted into the air. Below her, James was also frozen in a beam. Their eyes met for 1 second before they were pulled into different transport ships. Inside the alien vessel, Sarah found herself in a massive cargo hold with thousands of other humans. The stasis released. People began screaming, crying. Some tried to fight the alien guards that appeared at the doors. The guards were not cruel. They were not kind either. They were efficient. They herded the humans like cattle. Anyone who resisted was stunned with some kind of energy weapon. Just paralyzed until they could be carried to the holding cells. Sarah ended up in a cell with 40 other people. The walls were transparent. She could see hundreds of other cells, all filled with confused and terrified humans. A woman next to her was sobbing. A man was pounding uselessly on the wall. "Stop," Sarah said quietly. "Save your strength. We will need it." The woman looked at her with tear-filled eyes. "For what? We are slaves now." Sarah did not answer. She was already studying the cell, the walls, the door mechanism, the guards' equipment. She was a scientist. Observation was what she did best. Over the next 3 months, 2.7 billion humans were taken from Earth. Not everyone. The aliens needed some humans to remain and keep the planet running. They installed puppet governments, leaders who agreed to cooperate in exchange for their own freedom. Most people called them traitors. Some called them realists. When the harvesting began, he had been aboard a submarine. The alien scanners had trouble penetrating deep ocean water. He surfaced only at night, coordinating with other survivors. Military personnel who had escaped. Civilians who had hidden in caves and underground bunkers. "We are not beaten," Stone told his growing resistance network. "We are just delayed." The captured humans were distributed across the galaxy. Sarah ended up on a mining colony on a planet called Hectorus 7. The air was thin. The gravity was heavy. The radiation from the nearby star would have killed most species within weeks. But humans adapted. The alien overseers were Drin, a species that looked like walking reptiles. They wore protective suits against the radiation. They breathed supplemental oxygen in the thin air. They moved slowly in the heavy gravity. The humans just worked. After the first week, they stopped needing the oxygen supplements. After the first month, most showed no signs of radiation sickness. The Drin doctors could not explain it. "These humans are more resilient than the data suggested," the head overseer reported to his superiors. "We may have underestimated their biology." Sarah worked in the mines during the day. At night, in the cramped barracks, she taught other humans what she knew. Physics, engineering, mathematics. She drew diagrams on the walls when no guards were watching. She explained how the mining equipment worked, how the force fields functioned, how the alien technology operated. "Knowledge is our weapon," she whispered to others. "Learn everything. Remember everything. Our time will come." The resistance was growing, not just on Hectorus 7, but on dozens of worlds. Humans worked slowly when guards were watching. They worked efficiently when they were alone. They memorized patrol patterns. They studied weak points in security systems. They learned to communicate across work sites using codes the aliens did not understand. On a terraforming station above a gas giant, a human engineer named Marcus figured out how to reprogram a maintenance drone. On a construction platform building a space elevator, a welder named Chen discovered the alien welding torches could be modified into weapons. On a research station where humans were used as test subjects, a former soldier named Rodriguez managed to steal data chips containing technical specifications. All across the galaxy, in work camps and mines and construction sites, humanity was learning, adapting, planning. Ambassador Kelthros reviewed the reports with growing unease. Productivity was good. The humans worked hard, but there were irregularities. Equipment malfunctions that should not happen. Missing supplies. Guards who reported feeling watched, even when scanners showed no one nearby. Increase security, he ordered. These are primitives. They need firmer control. But he did not understand the fundamental truth about humanity. They were not primitives who had been given purpose. They were survivors who had been given a reason to fight. On Earth, General Stone looked at the night sky from his hidden base in the Himalayas. Somewhere up there, billions of humans were in chains. His people, his species. Hold on, he whispered to the stars. We are coming for you. 2 years had passed since the invasion. The aliens thought they had won. They thought humanity was broken. They were wrong. The revolt began on 43 worlds at exactly the same moment. 2 years of planning. 2 years of secret messages passed between work camps. 2 years of humans pretending to be broken while they learned and prepared. On Hectorus 7, Sarah Chen stood in the main power facility. She was supposed to be cleaning the equipment. Instead, she was holding a plasma cutter that had been modified in ways the Drin engineers had never imagined. Around her stood 20 other humans, all armed with tools that were now weapons. Now, Sarah said quietly, the humans moved with precision that shocked their alien overseers. 2 years of hard labor had made them stronger. 2 years of thin air had expanded their lung capacity. 2 years of radiation had somehow made them more resilient, not weaker. The Drin guards in their protective suits moved like they were underwater. The humans moved like striking snakes. Sarah immediately went to the communication console. Her fingers flew across the alien interface. She had watched the operators for 2 years. She knew every command. This is Hectorus 7, she broadcast on the emergency frequency. The mine is ours. Repeat, the mine is ours. Across the galaxy, similar messages began flooding in. Work camps liberated, construction platforms seized, terraforming stations captured. The coordination was perfect. The aliens had thought humans were primitive and disorganized. They had not understood that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to cooperate when survival demanded it. Ambassador Kelthros received the reports in his office on Zenthar Prime. For a moment, he could not process what he was reading. 43 simultaneous revolts. Impossible. Humans did not have the technology for faster-than-light communication. They could not have coordinated across such distances. Except they had. How? He demanded of his intelligence officers. The answer came slowly. Humans had been watching the alien communication systems, learning them, figuring out how to access them. They had been sending messages disguised as routine status reports. Mathematical sequences hidden in work schedules. Codes embedded in medical data. They had been planning this since day one. Send the security fleets, Kelthros ordered. Crush these rebellions. Show them what happens when slaves forget their place. But the security fleets found something they did not expect. The humans had weapons. Real weapons. Stolen alien technology that had been hidden and modified. Energy rifles, plasma grenades, even a few fighter craft that humans had somehow learned to pilot. On Titan Station, above Saturn's largest moon, General Stone stood on the bridge of a captured alien destroyer. It had taken 6 months to figure out the controls, another 3 months to train crews, but now humanity had warships. All ships, this is Stone, he broadcast to the growing human fleet. Operation Reckoning begins now. We are taking back our people. The destroyer's engines came to life. Behind it, 19 other captured ships followed. It was a tiny fleet compared to the alien armadas, but it was a start. Earth's resistance had not been idle either. Scientists who had remained free had been studying the alien technology from captured equipment. They made breakthroughs the aliens had taken centuries to achieve. Human minds, it turned out, were very good at finding new solutions to old problems. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo had cracked the secret of the alien shields. They were not invincible. They worked on specific frequencies. Change the frequency of your weapons, and the shields became useless. This information spread through the resistance network within days. Suddenly, human weapons that had been ineffective were destroying alien equipment. The aliens scrambled to recalibrate their shields, but every time they did, the humans figured out the new frequency. It was a race, and humanity was winning. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber that had been so confident 2 years ago was now filled with panic. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded total war. Others wanted to negotiate. A few suggested abandoning the human colonies entirely. Silence! High Chancellor Vrin's voice cut through the chaos. She had ruled for 3 centuries, but she had never seen the council like this. Ambassador Kelthros, explain how a pre-contact species has managed to capture 43 facilities and build a military fleet in just 2 years. Kelthros stood at the podium. His blue scales had lost their luster. He looked like he had aged a decade in days. Chancellor, we did not anticipate their learning capacity. Humans absorb information at rates we did not think possible. They reverse engineer technology faster than our own engineers. And he paused, struggling to continue. They do not give up, ever. We damaged their cities, and they rebuilt. We captured their people, and those people became saboteurs. We enslaved them, and they became an army. Every punishment we impose makes them more determined. Every hardship makes them stronger. A Vehlari representative stood for the first time in living memory. The entire chamber fell silent. The Vehlari spoke perhaps once every 100 years. When they did, everyone listened. We abstained from your vote, the Vehlari said in a voice like wind through crystal. We knew what you did not. Earth is what we call a death world. Gravity that would crush most species. Diseases that have killed billions. Predators that hunt in packs. Humans evolved in an environment that tried to kill them every single day for millions of years. They did not just survive, they dominated their entire planet. The Vehlari looked directly at Kelthros. You did not enslave a weak species seeking purpose. You attacked an apex predator and told it to submit. Now you face the consequences. The chamber erupted in panic again. But Vrin was already calculating. The humans had numbers, they had motivation, and now they had alien technology. If the war continued, how many council species would fall? On Hectorus 7, Sarah watched the first human relief ships arrive. Former slaves were now liberators, bringing supplies and weapons to other camps. She had been elected commander of the Hectorus 7 garrison by the other humans. She had not wanted the role, but someone had to lead. A young man approached her. His name was David, and he had been captured from Beijing. Dr. Chen, we have intercepted alien transmissions. They are panicking. Some of their worlds are requesting peace talks. Sarah nodded slowly. Tell them we will talk when every human is free, not before. She walked to the window and looked at the toxic orange sky of Hectorus 7. This planet had been meant to break them. Instead, it had forged them into something stronger. The aliens had made a critical error. They had assumed humanity's violence and division were weaknesses. They had not understood that those same traits became terrifying strengths when humanity had a common enemy. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion, humans were not the prey. They were the hunters. 4 years after the invasion, humanity unveiled its secret. The human fleet gathered in orbit above liberated Titan Station. 10,000 warships. Most were captured alien vessels that had been repaired and improved. But some were completely new, designed by human engineers, built in hidden shipyards across the outer solar system. They incorporated alien technology, but improved upon it in ways that made alien engineers scratch their heads in confusion. General Stone stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance. It was a human-built carrier larger than anything Earth had ever constructed before the invasion. Next to him stood Dr. Sarah Chen, now humanity's chief strategist and scientist. She had escaped Hectorus 7 6 months ago and immediately joined the military command. All ships report ready, the communications officer announced. Sarah pulled up a holographic map of Council space. Red dots marked enemy strongholds. Blue dots showed liberated human territories. There were far more blue dots than anyone had thought possible 4 years ago. Operation Reckoning Phase 2, Sarah said calmly. We are going to end this war, not by conquering the galaxy, by showing them that fighting us costs more than making peace. The fleet moved out. Their target was the Zorvathian home system, Ambassador Kelthros's people, the species that had led the vote to enslave Earth. The journey took 3 weeks, at faster-than-light speeds. The human ships used captured alien drives, but they had learned to make them faster, more efficient. Human engineers had a saying now: if it is not broken, improve it anyway. When the fleet arrived at Zorvath Prime, they found the orbital defense platforms ready. The Zorvathians had been preparing for this. 3,000 defense ships. Weapons satellites covering every approach. They have been building up their defenses for months, the tactical officer reported. Stone smiled grimly. They are preparing for the war we fought 4 years ago. They have not adapted, we have. The battle began with a move no alien species expected. The human fleet did not attack the defenses. Instead, they bypassed them entirely. Small, fast ships darted through the defensive perimeter and headed straight for the supply depots and fuel stations far from the main fleet. Without supplies, the Zorvathian defense fleet could not operate for long. Without fuel, their ships became expensive pieces of metal floating in space. This is not honorable combat, the Zorvathian admiral broadcast angrily. Sarah opened a channel. You enslaved our civilians. You destroyed our cities without warning. You do not get to lecture us about honor. The human fleet employed tactics the Council species had never seen. Humans had studied their wars. World War II, Vietnam, Afghanistan, centuries of experience fighting superior forces had taught them valuable lessons. Hit supply lines, target morale, make the enemy afraid. Most galactic species fought wars with rules, formal challenges, designated battle zones, limits on acceptable targets. These made warfare somewhat civilized, predictable. Humans fought total war. Everything was a valid target except civilians. And even then, human psychological warfare made civilian populations terrified of continuing the conflict. On Zorvath Prime, the population watched in horror as their orbital defenses fell apart. Not from direct assault, from systematic dismantling of everything that supported those defenses. The human fleet broadcast continuous footage of the enslavement camps, the destroyed cities on Earth, the millions of humans who had died in captivity. Ambassador Kelthros watched from the planetary command center. His homeworld was not damaged. Not a single human weapon had struck the surface. But his fleet was crippled. His people were terrified. And human ships controlled the space around his planet. His communication console lit up. A transmission from the human flagship. Ambassador Kelthros. Sarah Chen's voice was cold. You voted to enslave us. You led the fleets that destroyed our cities. You assigned millions of humans to die in your mines and construction sites. We could do the same to your world. One word from me, and Zorvath Prime becomes a memory. Kelthros felt something he had not experienced in his long life. True fear. What do you want? He asked quietly. Unconditional surrender. Your fleet, your weapons, your personal testimony at the War Crimes Tribunal. In exchange, we will not harm your planet. We will not enslave your people. We will show you the mercy you denied us. Kelthros looked at his advisors. They all wore the same expression. They had no choice. I surrender, he said. Across council space, other species were watching. The mighty Zorvathians had fallen in 3 days. Not through overwhelming firepower, through superior strategy and the humans' terrifying willingness to do whatever it took to win. 40 species sent immediate messages to Earth, requesting peace negotiations. 80 more began withdrawing their forces from human territories. The Galactic Council fractured as species started making separate deals with humanity. High Chancellor Vryn called an emergency session. Only half the delegates showed up. Some species had already switched sides. Others were too afraid to leave their home systems. The council is broken, one delegate said. The humans have shattered everything we built. The Velari representative stood again. No, you shattered it when you voted for slavery. The humans merely showed you the consequences. On Earth, crowds filled the streets in celebration. For the first time in 4 years, people felt hope. The alien puppet governments had fallen. Human governments were being restored. And overhead, the human fleet stood guard, protecting the planet that had nearly been destroyed. But Sarah Chen was not celebrating. She stood in the command center, looking at casualty reports. Millions of humans were still in camps on distant worlds. Millions more had died in the fighting. Earth's cities were rebuilding, but the scars would last for generations. General Stone approached her. We are winning. Why do you look so troubled? Because we need to decide what kind of species we want to be, Sarah said quietly. We have the power now. We could enslave them in return. We could destroy every species that voted against us. We could become exactly what they accused us of being. Or we could prove them wrong. Yes, but that is the harder choice. A transmission came in. High Chancellor Vryn requesting a direct meeting. Surrendering control of council space. Offering to stand trial for crimes against humanity. The moment of truth had arrived. Humanity held the power. The galaxy waited to see what they would do with it. Sarah looked at the transmission for a long moment. Then she made her decision. Prepare my shuttle, she said. We are going to show them what humans are really made of. The Galactic Council chamber looked different with human soldiers standing guard. 6 years had passed since the vote to enslave Earth. Now, delegates from 500 species sat in the same seats where they had once condemned humanity. But this time, they were the ones waiting for judgment. Sarah Chen walked to the central podium. She wore a simple military uniform with no decorations. Behind her stood General Stone and a dozen other human representatives. Before her sat Ambassador Kelthros in restraints, High Chancellor Vryn under guard, and hundreds of other officials who had supported the enslavement. The chamber was silent. Every species wondered what punishment the humans would demand. Enslavement in return? Mass executions? The destruction of entire worlds? Sarah looked at the assembled delegates for a long moment. Then she began to speak. 6 years ago, you voted to enslave my species. 846 species said yes. 0 said no. 1 abstained. She nodded respectfully to the Velhari delegate. You decided we were primitive, violent, unworthy of freedom. You thought we needed purpose, and you would give it to us through chains and forced labor. She pulled up holographic images. Earth's destroyed cities, the work camps, mass graves where humans had died from exhaustion, disease, and abuse. The chamber filled with uncomfortable shifting as delegates were forced to see what they had done. 2.7 billion humans were taken from their homes. 847 million died in your camps and construction sites. Earth's population was reduced by nearly half. Our cities were destroyed, our families torn apart. Sarah's voice remained calm, but her eyes burned with contained fury. You justified this by calling us primitive, by saying we lacked morality and unity. You claimed you were civilized and we were not. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Then we showed you what humans do when you threaten our survival. We learned your technology in months instead of centuries. We fought your armies and won. We liberated our people and conquered your strongholds. We brought the mighty Galactic Council to its knees in 6 years. Ambassador Kelthros lowered his head in shame. High Chancellor Vryn's face remained expressionless, but her eyes showed fear. We have the power now, Sarah continued. We could enslave every species in this chamber. We could destroy your worlds as you destroyed ours. We could make you suffer as we suffered. And by your own logic, by the vote you took 6 years ago, we would be justified. You established the precedent that stronger species can enslave weaker ones. The delegates sat frozen. Some were visibly trembling. But we are not going to do that. Because you were wrong about us. You mistook our division for weakness, our violence for cruelty, our passion for lack of control. You did not understand what you were seeing. She walked closer to the delegates. Humans fight among ourselves because we care deeply about ideas and principles. We argue because we value different perspectives. We compete because we push each other to be better. But when an outside threat appears, when our species is in danger, we become unified in ways you cannot imagine. Sarah pulled up new images. Human soldiers helping alien civilians evacuate war zones. Human doctors treating wounded soldiers from species that had enslaved them. Human engineers rebuilding damaged infrastructure on former enemy worlds. This is also humanity. We have capacity for great violence, yes. But we also have capacity for great compassion. The same species that fights wars also builds hospitals. The same people who create weapons also create art. We are not simple. We are not easy to understand. But we are not the monsters you believed us to be. She turned to face Ambassador Kelthros directly. You will stand trial for war crimes. You and 146 others who led the enslavement. If found guilty, you will face justice. Some of you will likely face execution. Others will spend the rest of your lives in prison. Kelthros nodded slowly. He had expected nothing less. But, Sarah continued, her voice rising, your civilians will not be punished. Your children will not suffer for your crimes. Your species will not be enslaved, because we are better than you were. We will not repeat your mistakes. She addressed the full chamber now. The Galactic Council is dissolved. In its place, we establish the United Galactic Assembly. Every species gets one vote, including humanity. But there will be new laws. The Terra Accords. She transmitted the document to every delegate. They read in stunned silence. All enslavement is prohibited. All sentient beings have inalienable rights to freedom and self-determination. War crimes will be prosecuted by an international tribunal. Economic sanctions will replace military conquest. And Earth, as the species that established these principles, will serve as enforcers and peacekeepers. One delegate, a Mervani representative, stood hesitantly. You are making yourselves rulers of the galaxy? No, Sarah said firmly. We are making ourselves protectors. There is a difference. We do not want to rule you. We want to ensure no species ever experiences what we experienced. We will have veto power over military actions, and the authority to intervene in cases of slavery or genocide. But your internal affairs remain your own. General Stone stepped forward. We are also offering aid. Human engineers will help rebuild worlds damaged in the war. Human doctors will share medical knowledge. Human teachers will establish cultural exchange programs. We will help you recover from this war. The delegates looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. This was not how conquering species behaved. Victors took tribute. They demanded submission. They did not offer to help the defeated. The Vihari representatives stood slowly. We abstained from the original vote because we knew Earth was a death world. We knew humanity would not submit easily, but we did not anticipate this. You have proven something we have never seen in 10,000 years of observation. The Vihari looked at Sarah with something approaching respect. True strength is not the capacity for violence. It is the wisdom to choose peace when violence is possible. Humanity has both. You are worthy of leading this galaxy. Over the next year, the trials proceeded. 147 individuals were convicted of war crimes. 37 were executed. The rest received life sentences. Ambassador Kelthros was among those executed. He faced his death with dignity, acknowledging his crimes and asking forgiveness he knew he did not deserve. High Chancellor Vryn received a life sentence. Before being taken to prison, she spoke to Sarah one last time. I underestimated your species, Vryn said quietly. I thought mercy was weakness. I was wrong. Your mercy is the strongest weapon you have. It is what makes you worthy of the power you now hold. 20 years later, Sarah Chen stood in the same council chamber, now called the United Assembly Hall. She was older now, gray showing in her hair, but her eyes were still sharp. Before her sat representatives from over 1,000 species. The galaxy had grown more peaceful. Wars still happened, but they were rare. Enslavement had been completely eliminated. Dozens of species that had been oppressed by council members were now free. Earth had become the center of galactic civilization, not through conquest, but through example. Human universities trained students from hundreds of worlds. Human peacekeepers protected the weak. Human mediators resolved conflicts. A young Zorvathian student approached Sarah after the assembly session. She was from the generation born after the war. She knew the history, but had not lived through it. Dr. Chen, the student asked, why did humans choose mercy? You could have destroyed us, made us pay for what our ancestors did. Sarah smiled gently. Because destroying you would not have brought back our dead. Making you suffer would not have healed our wounds. Revenge is easy. Mercy is hard. But mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism. She looked at the young Zorvathian. Your people made a mistake, a terrible one. But we judged individuals, not species. Your ancestors were guilty. You are not. You deserve the chance to build something better. The student nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. Sarah walked to the windows and looked out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, blue and green and alive, rebuilt, thriving, stronger than ever. Humanity had been tested. They had been enslaved, degraded, nearly destroyed. The galaxy had tried to break them. Instead, humanity had saved the galaxy from itself. And that, Sarah thought with quiet satisfaction, was the greatest victory of all.